In this video, we're going to look at how you remove the fur from an Animagic guinea pig or an Animagic rabbit, and how to disassemble an Animagic guinea pig or rabbit, and find out a bit about how they work. The two models are identical, other than the rabbit has an extra clip-on part on its back and on the top of the legs. So I started on the back to unpick the stitches because I noticed when I took the fur off the guinea pig that the stitching along the back seemed to have been put on last, and unlike the rest of the stitching it was done by hand and, as you can see, was quite easy to take apart. Next, I started to undo the stitches on the front legs because you need to get access to the screws on the front legs and undo them in order to take the leg off and get the rest of the fur off. Next, after taking the two front legs off, I started working on the back of the head and removing some more of those stitches as far as I could. And after I took those stitches out, that allowed me to be able to pull the fur off the whole body and off the back legs. There was just a couple of stitches that were holding the back legs onto the fur, so I just had to use my seam ripper to cut those. And once those stitches were removed, I was able to pull the fur back right to the back of the head. And on this model, the same as was with the guinea pig model, it's got two pieces of elastic that attach the head and keep it in place to the fur by these two little elastic loops that clip over some little clips. So I removed those, and then I was left with just the pink material that was holding it onto the rabbit. So the stitching's too difficult to unpick on that, so I just cut that with a pair of scissors to finally release the rabbit completely. And then I removed the fur from the two front legs and screwed them back onto the rabbit's body. And then that was it. All the fur was removed pretty much in one piece. And as I said, the inside, the mouldings are exactly the same, other than the rabbit has this extra plastic moulding on the top of the leg and an extra plastic moulding on the top of the back, and those just clip off. And this is the guinea pig version that we used to disassemble. So these three screws, releasing them, releases the head.
We should separate that connector there.
Okay.
That's good. Simple as that.
Oh, had to release the little tab there. So we've got two screws here. Right, so goes apart. So we've got just one screw there.
Take it out.
Okay, so we've got the outer shell off. This is what was inside. That's the mouth there that you push the bottle, and I've got the carrot. The two different widths and depths But we'll just take these screws.
Take those screws out as well. Let's see if it finally uncovers the switches. So if I push something in, we should be able to see the switches operating.
Oh yeah.
Well, one of them anyway.
So this is a carrot accessory. Push that in. That's operating the first switch. This is the bottle accessory. Push that.
Go on, push it in.
I see.
Operates the second switch.
It's because it pushes
wider.
the whole plastic. Because it's wider, it pushes the whole plastic thing back.
Okay, so the bottle operates one switch and the carrot operates the other.
Yeah, so that operates the bottle, and that one operates the carrot. How interesting!
Push the carrot in again. Let's just see the other switch operating. Yeah.
And then this pushes the whole thing back.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. So 2 switches, as we thought.
So we can take a look in the body. So we've got 2 screws here and 2 screws here.
Okay, what have we got here? We've got switch and speaker.
That's the motor.
Yep.
And what are the 2 components on the top?
They could be resistors, but they could also be inductors.
What's that tiny circuit board that's on the
This.
motor? Yeah.
It's got these 3 capacitors.
Right.
Which is an arrangement which is put across a motor to reduce the amount of interference that a motor can generate, because they generate a heck of a lot of interference, brushed DC motors. So that tends to damp it down, that set of 3 capacitors there. The surface mount as well, which is why they're so small.
This is very interesting. They've got a weight there. And interestingly, the Animagic little bunny that we unboxed and played with, I think it was round about last October. That's a new one, and we knew there was weight in it because you could feel it was so heavy.
That's right.
So this is by the same company. It's not the first time they've used weight to balance it.
To get the action they want from the legs, really, isn't it? The way it moves.
So here we've got the speaker.
That's right.
And here we've got the mounting for the switch.
Let's take this tape off, because it's gone past its sell-by date as well.
Well, I think they're 2009, so getting on a bit now.
So we've got 2 wires going to the motor from the circuit board. We've got, that's probably coming from the switch, because you've got a try-me, haven't you? Off, try-me, and...
Oh, I forgot all about, of course, there's the 3-position switch that's underneath here, of course, yeah, so that's what that's for.
You've got another micro switch here on this yellow and white wire.
Oh, you thought that was a switch, didn't you? So that's to do with this piece of plastic that comes round off the leg.
It's sensing where the leg is. Yeah, so it's not overdriven past a certain point, I would say.
Right.
And you've got these 2, this connects to 2 switches from the mouth. Got the speaker wire, you've got another switch wire there. What else have we got that we've not identified? It's a red wire, looks like the power wire from the positive battery. That's the motor, we said. We don't know what, there's a bunch of wires here. What do those go to? What's that there? It looks like it's some sensing element on the motor, maybe. Position sensing, maybe? Okay, so we'll take this off. You can hold that if you want while I get these out. So we could really do with taking the top of the guinea pig off and putting it to one side, so we'll have to take the speaker out.
So that's the speaker
That's
removed.
the speaker, yeah, removed. And
then we've got the push button switch.
that's not removed. Okay, push button switch. The last thing we'll do tonight is take this off to see what it is, yeah, because I'm intrigued. I suspect it's some switches that sense the position of the motor via a cam maybe, or something like that, and feed it into the microcontroller.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It's a couple of switches.
So can you describe what that is, Paul?
It's two very small switches, little plastic operating tops.
So what operates the
switches? That was mounted there, and you can see there's some sort of cam here. You can see if I move the leg a bit over there's like lumps
yes, I could see,
on it, and those will come round and touch those switches. So it's effectively telling the microcontroller where the leg is, because the legs go like this, don't they?
Yeah.
The legs go like that to make it move in its own particular way. We've got those two switches for position feedback on the motor, and we've got another one here which is position feedback on the leg.
So that's 3 switches.
So 3 switches all used for determining where the legs are. And there's 2 more micro switches in the motor. So that's 5 micro switches in this toy.
And there's a reason for us taking apart the guinea pig and me removing the fur off the rabbit. It wasn't for the sheer hell of it. We are going to use them in 2 projects. So I've been using the rabbit to make a fur covering. Though this fur covering won't be for this rabbit, I've just used it to model it on whilst the guinea pig is taken apart. And this is actually really cuddly because I've put padding underneath. And the project that we're going to do on the guinea pig is we're going to replace the push button switch on the back with Paul's homemade soundboard. You're making a soundboard from scratch, aren't you, Paul?
Yes. See if we can get one that operates a little bit better than the cheap Chinese ones.
Yes, we used a cheap Chinese one on Hedgie's project. Basically try and do the same thing to get operated by voice instead of a push button switch. But it didn't work as we had first wanted to.
It wasn't very sensitive, was it? And the sensitivity varied as well for all sorts of reasons.
Yes, and we'll go into detail about that in a future video, which will be posted in a couple of weeks when we've completed this project. So we're going to control the guinea pig by voice. So we're going to be able to power it up and get it to move by voice instead of using the switch on the back. And you've been working on the soundboard, haven't you, Paul?
That's right, yeah. This is it in front of me. I've just been doing a few tests on it, making sure it works all right before we hook it up into the guinea pig and see if it still works okay.
And you were asking me about space, Paul. How much space would we have in this guinea pig?
Yeah, in order to put our homemade soundboard.
But the thing is, I've actually created more space by putting all this stuffing in between the fur and the plastic, so we could actually sink some components into that stuffing.
Okay, yeah.
And also you'd be removing the push button switch so that from the top.
That's right.
So that'll create a bit of space as well. And what I've got planned for the rabbit, which is a project we're not working on now, it's a project for the future, is to use an Arduino.
Using an Arduino, microcontroller.
Instead of using this circuit board with the microcontroller.
I see. So you're on about taking everything out and controlling all the sensors and the motors with our own microcontroller board, Arduino, and programming it ourselves. Yeah.
Because quite fancied altering the 2 micro switches, replacing those in the head with a Hall effect sensor.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be using our own Arduino, that'd be easier to do, wouldn't it?
It will, yes, that's right.
But I also wondered, Paul, about these switches here. You know these switches here on this board?
Oh yeah, these little micro switches that are operated by the cams on the gearbox or the legs. Yeah.
And this other switch here, which also is to do with the positioning of the leg.
Yeah, that's operated by a lug on the hip, isn't it, as it rotates?
Well, I just wondered if we were using an Arduino,
Mm-hmm.
would those switches be any use to us? Would the information, of where the leg is, would that be of any value to us? Could we use it?
Well, yeah, because we would be controlling the motor, this thing here, which drives the legs. So we need to know where the legs are in order to drive the motor the correct way.
Ah, right.
Because the legs can only move forward so much and backwards so much, and these switches tell you the limits,
Right.
the extent
so
of the.
It would stop you from like overdriving the
Yeah,
leg, trying to drive it too far.
Exactly, the positional feedback. So it's, for instance, when they're operated one way, the switches, it tells the microcontroller to stop the motor and then possibly reverse the motor so that the legs go backwards and keep on doing that to get that action of it jumping forwards like this.
What do you think that would be like using, obviously it'd be challenging, but what do you think it'd be like using sort of switches for positional feedback?
I think it'd be quite interesting and exciting replacing the entire heart, the original heart of the guinea pig, its microcontroller with your own, and then writing your own code, because you could potentially get it to do the same things and more things.
Oh, so you can maybe even do different movements or different sequences.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. And then we've got that switch here, the switch on the back, and again we will be using a soundboard, but perhaps we would be able to use a cheap soundboard if we're controlling it with our own microcontroller. Because
we would only be looking at it with the microcontroller, depending on how we'd written the code. We would only be looking at it when we want to. So what I mean by that is that we wouldn't be controlling the motor and making a noise, and we wouldn't be operating the speaker and making guinea pig noises. When we wanted to look at the microphone, we would make sure all that was quiet before we looked at the microphone, so that those sounds didn't interfere with picking up your voice.
And we would add an extra module.
Yeah.
We would add
an MP3 player with an SD card with the sounds on that we want the guinea pig to make.
Yes.
And then, of course, we connect this speaker to that MP3 module, which is quite small, the MP3 module. But the great thing is it comes with this SD card that you can put your own sounds on.
I mean, what we could do is maybe try to copy the original one and then put a load of other sounds on top of that. So you could have a guinea pig making a chattering sound, the sort of little bubbling sounds they make when they're chatting. And you could also get it to purr maybe. And we could think about, how we're going to move those back legs, what sort of sequences when we've got these sounds. If it's going to be still, if it's going to be moving, how it's going to be moving.
Yeah, how many hops forward is it going to go?
Yeah, it's actually a lot of variation there.
There is, yeah. If you've got the patience and the interest to sit down and write a program, you can get a lot of variation in there, yeah.
And of course, we've got still using the idea of feeding it, only using a Hall effect sensor instead of
to pick up the food, the fact that you're holding a carrot or something by the
rather
face.
Rather than two micro switches. And one thing I would be really interested in doing would be making something that was sort of similar to the old Furby or the Robo Baby, in that it keeps a sort of record of how many times it's being fed.
Yeah, like an emotional sort of memory or...
Yeah, like a memory, So that if it is weaking for food and you feed it, there's like a memory of that, and it won't ask again for So a certain length of time after
And it retains that
length of time.
It retains that information when you turn it off as well. You'd want that sort of ability from it.
Thing is, with this though, you never really turn it off. It's normally just left on standby because it's got a 3-position switch underneath, and then it goes into like a standby mode.
Right, so you can leave it on standby and it doesn't sort of drain the batteries then?
No.
And how do you wake it up from standby?
Well, you press the button on the back,
right.
we would use sound to wake it. So folks, I hope you enjoyed this disassembly video and hearing about our projects. The guinea pig project, which we are working on at the moment, we'll probably finish that, what do you think, Paul, in 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, I should think so, yeah.
So that's all the electronics and all the cosmetics, because obviously I've got lots of work to do on the head and the legs. And Paul's got all the work to do on the electronic side. But it should be finished in 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll be uploading a video on that.
Yeah.
But that's it for this video, folks. Thanks for watching as always, and hope to see you next time.